Welcome back to the Menopause Movement Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Michelle Gordon. And if you're watching on YouTube or on my website, thanks so much for being a part of the Menopause Movement. And if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, I appreciate you there too. Thanks so much. Today, we welcome James Wedmore to the podcast. James is one of my mentors and has helped me to grow my fledgling internet business by helping me to see things differently. Through James's teaching, I have come to understand that my beliefs are what will take me to my goal or hold me back, no matter what I desire in life. James has a very successful podcast called the Mind Your Business Podcast, where he helps entrepreneurs work on the most important part of their business, themselves. For 10 years, he taught entrepreneurs and online business owners how to leverage the power of online video and YouTube marketing to reach more people, share their message, and convert more customers. In 2016, he made a massive shift to focus on a big gap missing in the marketplace, the mindset needed for entrepreneurship. He launched a totally woo-woo podcast, the Mind Your Business Podcast, and his signature program, Business by Design. Now he helps coaches, experts, content creators, and authors not only to craft better marketing messages, but also how to ditch the hustle mentality and create success from the inside out. James has been featured on sites you've probably heard of, like Entrepreneur and Forbes, and has been featured as a speaker at major industry events like Kajabi Summit. His mission is simple: show business owners how to make serious cash doing what they're good at, so all work and no play becomes all work is play. Everything he does in his business, like making videos, teaching, and coaching, is fun. Anything that isn't fun, he stops, drops, or delegates. He believes one reason he hasn't experienced burnout or a plateau is because he finds the fun in everything he does. He leads with play, surfing, skateboarding, hanging out with his toddler nephew. His lifestyle is about fun in and out of the business. He wants to walk that talk every day, and he invites you to do the same. So stop taking this business stuff so seriously, enjoy the ride, and create your business by design. Now, during our interview, we discussed the importance of process in scaling any business, the Wedmore Woo and what that is, how he got into manifesting and spirituality, the importance of a spiritual practice in our overall self-development, our relationship with money, where money comes from, and it's probably not what you think, fear versus faith, the exact steps to getting out of fear, and stay to the end to find out a different perspective on this whole COVID situation and how you can possibly reframe this global crisis. Now, at the end of the episode, make sure you visit drmichellegordon.com/podcasts, where you can find the show notes, plus the links to the books and resources we mentioned in the episode. And if you're the type of person who is looking to pivot or perhaps start an online business, check out Business by Design at https:/bit.ly/DMGBBD2020. That's bit.ly/DMGBBD2020. And if you enjoy the episode, make sure you subscribe to the podcast so you're always the first to know when each episode is released. You can subscribe on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. And thank you for all of the 5-star reviews. If you haven't left a review yet, please take the time to review the podcast. This helps more women to find it and get the help they need during this disruption of menopause. No one should have to go it alone. And thanks so much for being a part of the menopause movement. I appreciate you. Now, let's get to James Wedmore. James, welcome to the Menopause Movement Podcast. You're the second man to come on to my podcast. The first one was a doctor who did hormones, and this is going to air right around the time that you launch your product. So June 10th is your air date, and I'm so excited that I actually came into your world because everything about my life has changed. And just so you understand, like when I bought your product, Business by Design, I didn't really know what I was getting in for. I thought it was a bunch of processes. And as the owner of a multi-million-dollar business, I know the importance of process.
Mhm.
And I always wanted to shift, and I've been trying to shift for, I would say, I don't know, 10, 12 years, and just never really took that right leap. And it was a text actually from you that moved the needle for me. And I said, I texted you and you're in the middle of the launch, and you were actually texting me back. And I said, well, what about the processes? Because I had just kind of started putting those in place in my own business. You said, I just give those to you.
Yep.
And I was like, okay, well, that's enough. That was enough for me.
Yeah.
Because I mean, when it comes to scaling, I mean, you have to have processes in place, right?
Yeah. And it's funny though, because a lot of people don't value them until they're, at a little bit further along.
Right.
It's funny how we notice them depending on who you're talking to, and they're like, okay, what does that do? And it's like,
Yeah.
gosh, it's like most people, when they're self-employed, they become self-employed usually because there's like some sort of desire to work less or have freedom or make more and work when I want, where I want, all those type of things. And then that rarely becomes their experience. And they
Yeah.
go like, okay, I'm working for myself now. And in most instances, they end up working more. And that's really the reason why, is because a business isn't a job. It's a collection of jobs.
Yeah, it
And
sure
if it's
is.
just you, you're doing all of those yourself, and then you get so attached to it, it gets all wrapped up in your identity, and you're like, how do I detach from it? How do I let go even of just these little pieces? Yeah, when someone comes around and is like, well, we have a complete process or an instruction manual so that you can just go find that next person today and say, here's your instructions on how to succeed at this job. They're like, oh, that's amazing. And they start letting go, which, yeah.
Yeah, it is nice to see that. And I mean, I would say that I was the person who, when I graduated residency in 2005, I started a surgical practice, and that was my whole identity. I mean, that was it. And then I started to grow, and I realized that number one, surgeons are really hard to manage. Number two, I hated it, and it wasn't for me. And so now I'm completely leaving it. And I think that if I hadn't, you know, seen that what you do is possible. I mean, you have a multi-million dollar business, almost $10 million, right?
Yeah.
And you just give us all your process. I just think
Yeah.
it's crazy. I mean, you got to pay for it. You pay, you pay once, but you get all these processes. And I just think I mean, it's crazy if you're the type of person, especially who wants to, start a business so this is kind of like a series that we're doing on the podcast because of the COVID, people have to pivot. And so I have one of my podcasts is Start Your Online Business Now. Colleen is her name. And this is much more advanced. So if you really are serious about starting an online business, you can go and buy Business by Design, and that's going to give you all the tools you need to get started. But then watch out. Watch out for the Wedmore woo.
Watch out for him. Oh yeah. Can't hide. Can't hide.
Yeah. Because, I mean, that's the thing. When I came into your sphere of influence, I was still pretty agnostic.
Mm.
And now I've got a full-on spiritual practice. And
Wow.
I'm yeah.
Sorry.
It's okay. Yeah.
I don't obviously push anything on anybody, and I honor everyone where they're at and all of that, because what Michelle's kind of hinting at here is, yeah, James talks about some kind of like weird stuff at times, like manifesting or visualizing or doing some meditations and stuff. And it's like, what does that have to do with like putting processes in your business? And where I started in my life was I was very agnostic myself. And just kind of had a decision one day. I don't even remember it because my parents never pushed any type of beliefs on me. And so I just remember like walking the halls in high school one day and just being like, I think when you die, you just become like dirt and starkness, And I just like decided that one day. And my dad is like the hardest working person I've ever met. 40 something years in real estate, and real estate itself is just brutal. And he was in his heyday, he's older now, he's in his 80s. He was a top 10 like high producer every year. So that guy works his tail off. I mean, I have a specific story of like being a kid, like 11 or 12, and we're surprising him with on his birthday with like breakfast in bed. And we've been working, my mom, sister, and I have been like making him breakfast, and we run downstairs, like give it to him, and then like put the plate on the bed and all that stuff. And like while he's like enjoying this special family moment, the phone rings and he like stops everything to get it. And it's like a client who like needs him on his birthday. Yeah. And you just see like the client's upset and everything. And I even knew at that age, I just yelled through the phone so that this guy would hear it. I've always been a stubborn SOB, and I was just like, "Happy birthday, Dad," to this person. And then you could just hear the guy was like, "Oh, and I share that because that's where I really grew up in, is this like 3D hardworking. You have to, old school. You got to sacrifice everything. Money doesn't grow on trees. Work your tail off, work your fingers to the bone if you ever want anything.
Mhm.
And so that's how I approached business. In 2007, I said, I'm going to start a business and I'm going to do my own thing and I'm going to do it on the internet. And I ended up spending 4 years doing that. And I worked so hard. I'm like, that's not even an opinion. Like, it was bad. I got addicted to Adderall, which is, like speed.
Yeah.
And I would pop 20 to 40 milligrams a day. I'd roll out of bed at 8 or 9 in the morning whenever I got up, pop the 20 milligrams and go until like midnight or 1 in front of a computer. I was a little overweight. I was about 220 something pounds. And in about I don't know, 4 or 5 month period, I dropped down to 147 pounds. I was a skeleton. I had no friends. I had to move back in with mom and dad. And I was working like that every day. I didn't take a day off. And I had nothing to show for it.
That sounds like
Absolutely
that
nothing.
almost sounds like adrenal fatigue too. I mean, you must have
Of
like burned out your
course.
adrenals,
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, it was bad. Now I think I'm
Yeah.
very lucky that I was in, my youth. This was
Mhm.
23, 24 years old. So I
Yeah.
think I, had some of that on my side to like, not feel the effects immediately, and that's where my 20s went really. And I had nothing to show for it. So I'm the type of person that like, and I think every entrepreneur has to be, where you have to be committed to the thing that you're going to do no matter what. And that's what commitment is. It's like, it's no matter what. The decision has been made that this is happening and it's no matter what. But I exhausted that effort. I was like, I'm confused. I've done it all. I've worked so hard. I've sacrificed everything, and I literally had nothing to show for it. That's not an exaggeration. I hadn't made $1. I mean, like,
Yeah.
it was bad. And so then I just started saying there has to be another way. And sometimes your entire life can turn around with a question or two, right? Like, there must be a better way. There must be a different way. And yeah, that began to open me up to some of these, weirder stuff, right? That I still joke around and say is really weird, like manifesting. And if I can share a story, the first time it like really clicked for me, because I'm very analytical. I'm very like scientist, like prove it to me, like all that type
Right.
of stuff, right?
I mean, I'm also the type of person who is very outcome oriented. I mean, I'm a surgeon,
Yes. Yeah.
and so it's like I'm always, looking at like, did I do that right? Did I do this right? And so
Hmm.
it all comes through that filter. But
Yeah.
then there's this whole other side that,
Mhm.
when you start to develop a spiritual practice, whatever it is, that's I mean, I've been on podcasts where I said, somebody said, "Well, do you have anything else you want to say?" And I said, "Yeah, start a spiritual practice now.
Wow.
Just
Yeah.
start
Yeah.
something because it makes you really look at who you are."
Mhm.
And I want to hear your story, but the reason why I stay with you and continue
Mhm.
to stay in your program, and James, you're one of my mentors, right? Is because every single time I come into somebody who's in your sphere or you, I learn something and I'm like growing as a
Yes.
human. And
That's
that's
it.
what I love.
That's it. And I want to
Yeah.
talk about some really important implications about what begins to happen when you develop that spiritual practice. But I'm sharing this because all of this, I mean, my mom gave me a book with some spiritual stuff in it years ago, 2005, 2006, and I threw it away in front of her. I was like, this is nonsense garbage, right? That's where I started with all this. And that's
Yeah.
my journey. That was my journey. So I honor anybody else's journey. Like, if you're really closed off to it, like, I actually really honor that, because that's the contrast and that's
That's where
part of
you
it.
are.
That's
Yeah.
where you are until you're not anymore. And that's great. That's where I was. But
Mhm.
where it all changed, I started hearing these things like, just manifest it and visualize it and all that type of stuff.
Oh,
And
that's around the time of The Secret, right?
yes, this was 2006.
2007.
Yep,
Yeah.
2007. And The Secret had came out and I watched it and I was like, this is such ridiculousness. But at the same time, there was a thought in the back of my head, like, well, what do you have to lose? It's like, I can do this and work. So at that time, I was dating this girl. I really liked her, and her birthday was coming up. And I knew she really wanted to go to a Tony Robbins event. Now, I didn't have very much money, but I called the Tony Robbins hotline and I said, how much to go to UPW? It's in Long Beach, it's right up the road. And they said, $1,000, we'll get you 2 tickets. And I was like, can you do a payment plan? I'm not even joking. She laughed at me on the phone. Like, I don't even know why
Wow.
someone would laugh like for that, like customer service. Like she laughed at me. She's like, no, we don't do payment plans. It's $1,000.
Yeah.
I felt so embarrassed. And then I never forget this. So I go, okay, I'm just going to check my finances and I'll call you guys back. I checked my bank account and I knew I had about $500 at the time. That's why I wanted the payment plan, right? So I could break it out. And I actually didn't have $500 because I had Google AdWords running at the time and I forgot to turn it off, and they billed me in $500 increments. So I had, by the time I'd gotten off the phone and checked my bank account again, I had less than $1 in my bank account. I just had pennies. And I was kind of hit with this moment of how pathetic am I that I couldn't even get my girlfriend a card. I couldn't even afford a birthday card. Now I'm living at home. So, everything else was paid for. So, so it wasn't like I was freaking out. Like the power's going to turn off, but like I couldn't pay for anything. And then of course that other thought came in. I was like, well, it wouldn't hurt to just try some of this stuff out. And what I realized, and this is why I share this story with people, is that I wanted those tickets and I wanted them for somebody else. That became a really big lesson later in my life, is that when you focus the outcomes and desires you have on how it will help those that you care about, and you make your life more about that, you just get so much power. And so I was like,
Isn't it Zig Ziglar though who said that? Help enough people get what they want, you're going to get what you want.
yes. And,
Yeah.
that quote can actually cause a lot of, it is a side tangent for a moment. That quote can be so misinterpreted by a lot of people and actually cause a lot more harm than good. Because what people start doing is say, okay, I'm just going to care about everybody else, lose myself in the process, give away everything I do for free. And then they start to resent people and the world because it's not being returned. And part of caring about what other people want and being of service, and it means you got to put a price tag on your stuff. You got to charge, right? Otherwise don't expect, if you don't ask, don't expect to receive. And that's really important. There's nothing wrong with asking. So, but in this moment, I said, look, universe, this isn't for me. Okay. This is a moment where I get to be selfless. This is for somebody I care about. And I realized in that moment that my entire belief system was, if I want something, I have to work hard to make the money to have it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really limiting. This is a very important thing that can be universal to all humans, is that we decide something that we want, and then we create this very limited focus, like almost like a circumference of a radar screen of how we're going to make that happen. And the only thing I had told myself was, okay, if I want $1,000 tickets, I need to go make $1,000. And you really want to ask yourself, is that the only way that you could have that outcome? Is that you have to go make $1,000 and you have to go work in your business a certain amount of hours and sell certain things? That's just one way. And so in that moment, what it allowed me to do is let go of the how. And that's why you hear me say it all the time, right?
Yeah,
F the how for now. And that's how it started. So I just said, you know what? It's done. I'm going to be there. I don't care. I know it in my heart. I can see it, and I'm going to make it happen. And then I moved on. And the story is about 2 or 3 days later, I'm trying to work and, okay, maybe I'll just sell something or figure it out, And about 2 days later, I get a text message from an old friend I haven't heard from in a really long time. And she goes, hey, you want to play tennis? And part of me is like, no, I'm trying to make this happen. At the same time, I was like, whatever, I need a break. And I'd love to do that. And so we go and we play tennis, and within 2 or 3 swings of the rackets, she goes, what are you up to? What are you doing now? And I'm trying to tell her, like, oh, I'm starting this service. It's a video service. I want to create videos for people so I can sell them a video package and blah, blah, blah. And she goes, oh, can I get one? And I'm like, oh yeah, of course. She goes, I'll trade you Tony Robbins tickets for it. And I literally dropped my racket and had this lightning bolt shoot down my spine. I'm like, what did you just say? And she's like, I'm good friends with a sales rep at Tony Robbins. I've got extra tickets. Would you be, and it's in town, it's Long Beach. Would you be willing to barter for me? And I was like, you gotta be kidding me. Like, yes, that's what I want to do more than anything. And yes, long story short, I made a video for her. It was amazing. She gave me 2 tickets. I went there. And even my mom then was like, hey, here's an extra little bit of money so you can have food for you and your girlfriend and could actually eat while you're there, and gave me a couple $100. And that was the first thing for me. And I know that's a really long story, but that began a deeper experimentation into, letting go of the how, of
Mhm.
opening myself up to a little bit more possibility in my life, what I call creating a margin for magic, and then backing all of that with strategy, having structure and strategy and process, and then combining that with, that intention. I believe intention is everything, and that focus and that spirituality. It's been a really fun journey of growth and whatnot, and that's where it started for me.
Well, I like to tell my members, I tell them that, a goal without action is just a wish, right? I tell them that. And it's kind of the same thing. And I think for somebody like me who is very outcome oriented, letting go of outcomes has been really hard. I mean, that's a big, faith experiment.
Hmm.
And with the last launch that I did to bring members into the menopause movement, it was, you know what? I didn't care. I mean, it was truly, I didn't care. And that was so freeing for me
Yeah.
because it was like, okay, I'm just going to have fun. I'm going to give them a lot. I'm going to make an offer. And you know what? All I'm going to have at the end of this is data, and all I have to do is tweak it. I know that something is going to happen, and so for me, it was just very, very freeing when I got to that point. But it took me several years because I've been trying to do this since 2008.
Wow. That's it.
Yeah,
And it's such a simple thing. It's almost too simple that people will overlook it. And then that's where I would just say, okay, well, you can go worry your way to it.
right.
You can white knuckle it, tighten your grip and struggle and stress your way to it. And tell me how that's working out. Because I did that.
Yeah,
I did that. And not only did it not work, but it's like, why put yourself through that? It's like when you're on an airplane. I realize this. I used to have a fear of flying, and fear of flying is really silly once you're on the plane, because no amount of fear or worry or stress is going to change anything that's going to happen. Like, your fate is sealed the moment you're in there, and it's such a beautiful demonstration of the acknowledgement of letting go of that which is outside of your control. And I realized that in a moment, that I could just choose to be like, I'm going to go. What's going to happen on this plane once that door closes and the wheels take off? Whatever's going to happen is going to happen. The choice and the freedom is how am I going to feel and experience during that? Is this going to be a struggle for me, or am I going to at least enjoy whatever happens? Wow, that's life. That's our entire life. Is like, things are going to happen. Things are going to unfold. Like you said, you doing this since 2008.
Mhm.
Like, that struggle is going to happen for everybody. Everyone's going to have some struggle, because I've yet to find someone that's like, okay, I said I wanted to start a business or take my business online, and then 2 weeks later, I had $1 million and everything worked out, and I never experienced a problem or a mistake. Yeah, I've yet to meet someone like that yet.
Right. Yeah.
And ironically, it's the opposite that's true, is that that's why people stop, is like, it didn't immediately happen. And they go, oh, it was a failure, or it didn't work instantly, automatically, so I gave up. Yet we all know those truths, right? That, like,
Mhm.
if at first you don't succeed, try again. Why aren't we applying that?
That's something we talk about a lot. I spend some time helping women just really just pay attention to how they talk to themselves.
Mm.
And one of the things I say to them is that, you know, if you want to do something, right? You want to learn how to do something. It's worth doing badly at first.
It'll be the
Right?
worst that ever
Yeah.
goes. It's all
Yeah.
uphill
And
from
so
there.
and it's just like you're never going to speak a second language, unless you learn it as a child. You're never going to speak a second language perfectly, and if you're trying to do a new skill, it takes time. I mean, that's just
Totally.
part of it,
Hmm.
and so one of the things I learned from you that I wrote down here was to and I didn't know that I was going to go here with this because this is what I love about doing a podcast because I like just
Totally.
having a conversation, but relationship with money.
Oh yeah.
You've got this really great, mind your money. Isn't that's what it's called, right? Mind your
Mhm.
money. Yeah. I was like, I'm not going to go through this. I'm multimillionaire. I'm okay. I don't, bullshit, right? And,
Yeah.
and then I went through it and I was like, oh, wow. I guess the question is, I mean, this is kind of a long way to get around to a question. What caused you to get to that point where you changed your relationship with money?
Oh my goodness. It wasn't overnight. None of this is overnight. I mean, I
Yeah.
reached these low points and I started going, something's got to give, something's got to change. There must be something else here. What really started to help was, and I'll tell you, the first book that really made the difference for me. I just was a voracious reader. And so when I started
Mhm.
reading these books about, like, energy, spirituality, manifestation, I just was hooked. And there was one book in particular that if someone reads this and just really adopts every word, like just soaks up every word, it's life changing. And it's called The Little Book of Abundance. And I'm forgetting the author's name.
Price. Pierce.
It's
either
Pierce.
Price or Pierce. Here it is.
Mm-hmm.
John Randolph
Okay,
Price.
it's just The Abundance Book, and it was little. That's okay. John Randolph
It's very little.
Price.
Yeah.
And it just gets right to the heart of it.
Great book.
And it starts with this, and this changed everything for me, that we have to identify this. So we want more money. Most of us do.
Yeah.
I mean, no one would say no. Would you like some more money? Some people say no because they're like, money's evil, money's bad, or people will judge me, and those are some other stuff that maybe we work through at another time. But most people are like, hey, would you like some more money? And so most people say yes. And so if you're someone who said yes, the first place we actually have to start is, what is the source of money?
Mm-hmm.
Where does money actually come from? And I've asked hundreds of people this. Like, we'll do surveys, we'll do posts, I'll ask clients, and 99 out of 100 people will answer incorrectly.
Mm-hmm.
They'll say it comes from my customers. It comes from, and they'll try and give like really smart. It comes from the economy. It comes from the Fed. Really smart answers, right? It comes from my offers. And when you apply a spiritual context, you get a deeper and what I believe a more truthful and more powerful answer. And it comes from, and whatever helps you, you can use any word you want that works for you, but it comes from that higher power, that source, whether you call that God, your higher source, the universe, really, doesn't matter. It's irrelevant.
Yeah.
It's just different perspectives and different words and labels. But when you start to get present to that's where it comes from, you then get to another question that says, how much of that supply of money is available? And the answer is always infinite.
Right. Yeah. Well, if there's infinite source, then there's infinite money, right? I mean, that's how it is. And
we know that. I mean, during this time, how much money is just being automatically printed right now? But that's another story.
I'm going to tell you that COVID has been we can talk about COVID in a minute, but I mean, for me financially, because I have a big business, I mean, it's been great. And a lot of that's going to get forgiven. And I mean, I don't know if you did a PPP loan, but
yes, we did. Yeah. We got,
I mean, how can you not say yes to good for free money? I mean,
right. And, we won't get into the downside of that. Some people make a really good argument that when you pump that much into the supply, that you run the risk of some massive inflation or devaluation of the dollar. But
it might happen.
It might happen. Yeah, exactly. But that's really not where we were going with this. What we're going with it is like, even during this time where you literally have an economic shutdown of anything non-essential. And it's tragic. And again, I'm not making light. Like, most people live, this is a side tangent, most people live in black or white, A or B.
Mm-hmm.
And, so if I say some of the things I'm going to say, it doesn't negate the fact that there's over, 20 million Americans filed for unemployment, a massive amount.
We have the highest unemployment ever in the history of the country.
Yeah, right, exactly. Now. Worse than the Great Depression.
I mean, it's so high. It's so high up that it's off the scale.
Right. So
it's bad.
Me saying what I'm about to say does not negate what is, and doesn't mean I can't hold the most unbelievable amount of compassion and just like actually pain in my heart for what most people are experiencing. Okay. And so it's very easy for people to be like, oh my gosh, you don't care about, what about all the people that blah, blah, blah. And it's like, yeah, exactly. What about all these people? And they need to hear this the most, because I'm in this little town of Sedona, Arizona right now, and it's a tourist town. Everyone is small business. There is no big business in Sedona. Okay. Other than a couple of hotel chains, but there's 2 fast food restaurants, and then that's it. There's no Walmart here. There's none of that. It's all mom and pop, and it's a tourist town. And it's 10,000 people that live here and 6 million tourists a year. And imagine going from 6 million down to 0. I mean, the town shut down. I mean, I went to the bike shop, and he said this week alone, we had to, just this week, 1 week, $20,000 in bike rentals and reservations in a week. Yeah. He's like, this is our whole business, is this little time, this 3-month time gone. And that, so this is really tragic, and I feel for him. So I bought a bike. I don't know if you're watching my stories or anybody watching my stories.
No.
I just bought a bike.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, are you selling any of these since they're not going to get rented? And he's like, dude, any cash we can get is gonna be great. I'm like, great, I'll take that one. And the local pizza guys are like, no one comes in anymore. And, you got to wait in your car and they hand it to you. And like, here's $100 tip. Right. So like, it really hurts me. And the town is already opened back up right now, which just, I go in every store I go into, cause I like to make a scene. I'm kind of a weird person like that. And I'll just walk in and I'll be like, congratulations for reopening. Yay. And I'll like start applauding or making
That
noise.
doesn't sound like an introvert.
No, that's another story. Wait until you,
I know.
my next.
I heard a little bit about that. Yeah.
Okay, great. So despite all of this, which sucks.
Yeah.
If you were to get to the truth, and it will resonate with you of where money truly comes from, that money comes from your source, God, your connection to a divine higher power. The real question you got to ask is, during a time like this, when everything else is on shutdown, is that source also on shutdown? Is that divine power also in fear and limitation and lack? And if you answered yes, it's because you're in your head. But if you really like got present to that, you'd know that'd be so silly, right? That's not true.
Yeah.
And that is why, my friends, that in every economic downturn, every crisis, everything, there are people, despite what the masses experience, there are still people that find infinite wealth, riches, and opportunities. And it's as simple as this, because they kept their connection to that source.
I agree with you there. And I think that connection with source is so important. And also, right now there's more people are online than ever. And so if, now is the time, if you were ever thinking about pivoting to online, it's time to go and do it badly.
Yeah, exactly. As bad as it is right now,
because if you're somebody who has been thinking about going and starting an online business, now is the time to do it, because there's more people. And when everything opens up again, people are going to have to go back to work or not. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that going forward, but right now is the time. And if, you buy Business by Design, you don't buy Business by Design, you still try to go online, because I don't think you're ever going to have as big an audience as right now.
Right.
It's the best time to really build something.
And let me really stress upon this point, because I think it's so important. So what do I mean by these people that have stayed connected versus haven't? When you're in fear, and I know it's easy to be in fear, so I'm not like, shaming anybody for that, but we have to remember that fear is not real, and people think it is. And then people justify it and say danger can be real, but fear is always a choice. That's what fearless is about. That's what being courageous is about. And not most people aren't. Like, this is the truth. You just look at most people. Most people are not living an extraordinary life. They don't want to live an extraordinary life, or maybe they do, but not badly enough. You know what I mean? And most people don't have that courage. They have it. Sorry, they're not accessing it. Most people aren't choosing to be fearless. And so it's easy to be afraid during this time. It's easy. I had my moments. It's like, oh my gosh, like we've canceled and postponed 6 events, and that's a lot in this short amount of time. And so you're dealing with, oh my gosh, what's going to happen, and how's this going to work, and how the money we've lost from deposits they wouldn't give back to us, which I won't even get into that, all that type of stuff, right?
I was lucky. I got my deposit, but I had to cancel a live event. I got my deposit. They just refunded me the other day. I was so surprised.
I won't name the hotel chain, but I'm like, I can't believe
I know already.
Yeah, it's like, that's awful. Yeah. It's like, it wasn't our choice. It's not like we wanted to cancel it. We're forced to. I mean, like, why penalize us? But they don't want to be penalized either. So I
had to cancel. I think I had to cancel 3 or 4 plane trips, because I live in New York, and I was supposed to come to California for your event. I was supposed to go to Austin for another event, and I did not get my money back from the airline. They kept it, and and that's the way it is.
Credit, at least, or
as a credit, yeah.
So there's a lot of people that have moved themselves away from faith, courage, trust, abundance, possibilities, their outcomes, into fear. And when you're in fear, all you've done is you've moved your attention, your awareness, your consciousness to an unmanifested future that is something you don't want to happen. That's all that we've done.
Right. And what
And
you
we
think about
think that,
expands. And what
yes,
you think about
exactly.
expands.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the thing is we think that if we fixate on what hasn't happened yet and worry about it, that will somehow give us some sort of control over it or safety or assurance. But it just directs your life in that direction. And I'm going to give this example so that people really get this, because as soon as this happened, as soon as all this came down the pipeline, was about a week, maybe less, after I closed escrow on my second property that I purchased out here to be
Right.
set up as a short-term rentals. So let me ask you guys, do you think the vacation industry, the travel industry has been impacted at all by what's going on? Of course it is, right? And so here I am, I spent over $1.2 million buying real estate, and I'm just closing the week this happens.
Mhm.
And my friends and people start reaching out to me and they're like, "Are you okay? Are you freaking out?" And I actually came out to Sedona and I just started laughing. I was like, "No, not at all. What? Are you serious?" And I go into these Facebook groups for these Airbnb people.
Right.
There's like these Facebook groups, like 20,000 Airbnb hosts. They are losing their effing minds. And then I'm watching in Sedona, because I watch the real estate markets like crazy in the
Mhm.
areas that I'm interested in. And all of a sudden, this is really important, all these hosts are either selling the home, they're just ditching it and trying to sell it, or they've switched it to a long-term rental. And a long-term rental here is a 12-month lease where you're maybe going to make $300 to $600 a month in cash flow. But this market in Sedona is about a depending on when you bought and how much you bought and all that stuff, 3 to 5x multiplier on your mortgage, which means it's very cash flow positive with
Yeah.
when you do the short term. And people are ditching that and then locking themselves into these low profit margin 12-month rentals.
Right.
Why? It's a combination of two things. Okay. And it's not to shame people or beat people up. This is to serve as examples of the choices that we have moment to moment. Number one, they're making decisions from fear. And I don't need to tell anybody here what happens if you keep making decisions from a place of fear in your business. You're not going to go very far. If anything, it's
Mhm.
going to take you backwards. So that was them. They're saying, "Oh my gosh, oh my gosh." And they made a decision like from fear, like ditch the property or switch it to a long term. And now I'm not going to make any money from it. And then it's when this all comes back, and I'll get to the happy ending in a moment. And not happy ending for these people, but for everybody else that weathered the
Yeah.
storm. Then now they can't go back. Now they have a 12-month tenant in, right? So but the other piece of it too is to understand that all of us should be, there's another piece, it's just being smart. Like if something, if you don't have a rainy day fund, like this isn't what the point is and topic of this episode, but like for those that like just are smart with their money, and it's like this, hope for the best, know for the best, expect for the best, but also be smart enough to prepare for the worst. There's a great quote that says, you can have all the faith, and I'm going to botch it, of course, but like have all the faith in the world, but you still tie up your camel, right?
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well,
You still
I
tie up
mean,
your
I mean,
camel,
but we're not, listen, we're not prepared as a general rule as a society. We
right?
don't,
People are living
we do
paycheck to
not, yeah,
paycheck.
we
They're in
do not
debt.
prepare. I mean, if we live in America, okay, so let's just talk to Americans and Western, people in the Western world. We are programmed from birth to be consumers,
Yes.
right? And
Mhm.
so we're taught that what's best is to have more, not to be
Mhm.
more,
So true.
right? And so what we have to do is, as part of our spiritual practice is to start to realize that we are enough as we are, okay? And then, what we get is more of a reflection on how how our spiritual relationship is, and not so much on who we are, if that makes
Mhm.
sense.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
completely. Yeah, I know. We should really change from being a consumer to just an investor. you know,
Well, that'd be great, but that's
that
not
would
how
be
we're
great.
taught, because
Right.
if we weren't sheep,
Yeah.
we wouldn't be able to be, what is the word I'm looking for, corralled
Right.
into, right? I mean, that's, I don't mean that in any way derogatory, in that, but we have to wake up. And
Yeah,
this
and I
leads us,
mean,
I
like,
think, to a good thing about COVID, right?
oh, completely, 100%. I mean, and the funny thing is like even some of the things that we talk about, like people start thinking it's like a conspiracy or something. It's like, wait a second, if you've spent one day in marketing, because I went college. My emphasis was in advertising, so it was PR and advertising in the film department. So it was about being part of commercial TV commercial advertisements.
Mhm.
And so I learned and did studies after case studies on the most infamous ad agencies and stuff throughout time. Where do they start with? How do we convince people that they need this product? Right? It's not a conspiracy or anything. That's where we start with, is like, how do we convince people that smoking is cool, that it will get you more ladies or whatever, right? Like, we know
Yeah.
that that's been done throughout time, but people didn't just stop doing it. you
Yeah,
know
that's true. Yeah.
and don't get me wrong, like, I love buying stuff, I like money, I like my gadgets and stuff too, but I think it's just about being aware of it, like just being
Mhm.
aware. Like, are you trying to fill a void with things, or spending because you think you're supposed to, or you're trying to impress somebody like your neighbor, your brother-in-law or something, or because you're like, I just desire this thing and I'm going to go get it. Like, I bought a Jeep out here and I'm like, I love it. I'm like, I'm a Jeep person now. This is so much fun. Right.
You're a
And
Jeep
that was
person when you're in Sedona.
right. But that's also a big deal too. It's worth saying, is because I had a Tesla, a
Mhm.
hundred and something $1,000 Tesla. And I traded in
Yeah, I
this
have a
Tesla
Tesla.
for a Jeep, and I'm like, the Tesla was more for others, you know, and the Jeep's for me, right?
Fair enough.
And knowing those differences, I think is really important. But the end of the story, before I forget, is a lot of people freaked out with in this Airbnb world,
Right.
and I didn't for a moment. I didn't for a moment, because number one, I knew, like, even if this was a 12 months, I'd be fine with the mortgages. It wouldn't have any impact, so I could weather that storm. And I think it's important to keep that in mind for us. But number two, I knew it would come to an end. And where do you think people would want to go? Sedona. Long story short, as of the recording of this, if you don't mind me sharing, is May
Uh-huh.
22nd.
Yeah.
I put up the listing a week ago, and I'm booked 2.5 months out. Solid.
That's
Solid.
great.
And that's just like, the point of that story is to begin to be mindful and create an awareness around when we make decisions and take actions from a place of fear versus faith. And when you really understand where is the source of money coming from, it's going to make it a lot easier for you to do that. And yes, pivot. Yes, there's changes coming. Yes, but that doesn't pinch off your connection ever unless you choose to. And I've noticed myself make changes and pivots over the years, and then boom, it's like, hey, I just found myself in the right place at the right time, like, time and time again.
Well, isn't it Vishnakakiani who says that your luck improves, right? He
Yeah,
calls
I
it he
like that.
calls it bending reality. But as you get more in line, then you just start being more lucky. And
Yeah,
it's not so much luck as it is maybe intention or
right. I
alignment. I
think
mean,
people
there's
from
so
the
many ways to put
outside,
it.
they see it as luck, and you're like,
Yeah,
no. Like, people say,
yeah,
like, it's not, that's crazy. It's like, not anymore. It isn't.
right.
Like, here's an
Yeah.
example. Like, even just, I love sharing these Airbnb stories. I hope you don't mind. But
No, it's fine.
I needed someone to manage the properties because I didn't want to do it for myself. I
Sure.
didn't want to do it. I don't have time to do that. So I just put that out there, and I said, I know I'm going to find the right person. It's going to happen, and we're getting towards the end. One's almost ready, and we still haven't found one. And then I'm watering the garden one day, and the neighbor comes out within 3 minutes. She's like, what do you do? I try to explain. It's hard to explain what I do, right? What we do.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, what do you do? And she's like, well, actually, I'm here because this is my sister's place, and I'm managing her Airbnb.
Uh,
And I'm like, oh, you looking for more? She's like, yeah. Now she's my manager. I mean, like, boom. And it's like, that's not even
yeah.
weird to me anymore. It's just like that stuff
Serendipity.
yeah, exactly. And that can happen. That
Yeah.
can be your daily experience. And when you
It
start
can be.
applying that in business, that's pretty awesome.
So just to get back, I want to circle back to the fear. If somebody is stuck in fear,
Mhm.
what is your recommendation to help them get out of it other than,
Yeah. Step number
kind of
one
go to
is to
gorge?
acknowledge the fear. Okay. Like, when
Okay.
you start to recognize it, you create separation because you become the observer of it. You go,
Mhm.
I have been, I am experiencing, I've really been in this place of fear. So then it's really like, who is the person that's recognizing that you've been in fear? Right. That's a really
Yeah.
kind of sends you on a rabbit hole. And
Who am
what,
I? What am I?
yeah, exactly. Who am I? And who am I? Am I the
Yeah.
observer of the fear, or am I the fear? And it's like, well, you're
Yeah.
both,
Am
but
I the voice or am I, yeah,
yeah,
the
exactly.
observer of the voice?
Uh-huh. So that's always step one. The more awareness and presence you can create in your life, the more miracles and magic's really going to unfold. Step number 2, I always invite people to say, or to look, actually, this sounds so counterintuitive, but it's like the Chinese finger cuffs, right? The
Mm-hmm.
people try and pull their fingers out and it keeps you more locked. You go in and you free yourself. So I would actually encourage people to take that picture of or feeling of fear and go to the worst case scenario. What is the worst thing what are you really afraid of? And then what do you think's really going to happen? And what's the worst thing that can happen? And when you really face it in your mind first and get present to it, what tends to happen, not to spoil the ending for you when you do this, is you tend to realize like it's not really that bad. That we've made it worse in our head. And when you shine a light on it and get it a little bit more clear, you're like, I can recover. I'll be fine. It'll be okay. It's not the worst thing. It doesn't matter. Because, one of my mentors told me this, and this is so important and so powerful. He says, the most powerful place to work from is zero. Because that's where we all started. The thing is what we do is we go out there and we start something and we create this fear of, what if this doesn't work? I don't think this is going to work. It's not going to work. What if I waste my time, my money, my energy? And then of course, for those that keep going and it works, because your success is inevitable, like you, then what we start to do, which is I did this, is we swap out that fear of what if this doesn't work, because now it's worked, and we replace it with a new one, which is, what if this doesn't last? What if it all comes crumbling down? What if I lose it? What if I have this money and I get a mortgage, but then 6 months from now, the business crumbles and I can't pay the mortgage, right? And so we're just going from these what ifs, fear. And wherever you're at in your life right now, if you took stock of what you have, from your family to the home, the roof over your head, the car, and whatever it is, you created that. Like, that's you. Like, you did that. And, one of the biggest lies we've all been told, which is why it is really powerful to have a spiritual context, but one of the biggest lies we've been told is that we're not powerful, that we aren't the creators of our life, that life is this thing that just happens to us, and some people just get lucky. And that's so nonsense, right? Anyone that you say, well, he or she is just lucky, will say the same thing about themselves. They don't say that. That's you that says that. That's not what they say about themselves. When you really ask them, like, some people do it from a place of humility, like, oh, I'm just lucky, I guess. But when you really ask someone that has, that full and complete and that rich life, they go, this isn't luck. This is an accident, right? And so when you take full stock of your life and what you have right now, you created that. And at one point that was a zero.
Yeah.
And so if you create it and then we're afraid things are going to get taken away, there's a lot of attachment there. But the fact that you've created what you have now always means you can create that again.
Yeah.
And
realizing, we have that capacity. And I just wanted to, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're good.
I wanted to tell a quick story. I don't know if you know this, but my son, when he was 21 months, had cancer. And so you talk about going to the worst case scenario. And so that's actually exactly what I did, not knowing. I mean, I didn't really have much of a spiritual practice then. I mean, he's 27 years old now, but I was like, okay, what's the worst thing that could happen? All right. The worst thing that could happen is he could die. All right. So that's just, and that's kind of like where I went from. And so I didn't live in fear. I did have anxiety.
It gives you an opportunity to kind of like accept one possible future.
Yeah.
And when you accept that as a possibility, it begins to lose a little bit of its charge, which means as soon as you accept it, it's not calling for your attention all day, every day, which means you won't be dwelling on it all day. Like, you'll just know it. Yep. That is one thing that absolutely could happen. Undeniable. And if that's what happens, that's what was meant to be. That's what the plan was. That's what's supposed to happen. And I accept that. And now you won't be spending 23 hours of your day being hooked by it and keep going back to it. And you get a little bit
letting go of the outcomes. Like, we go back to letting go of outcome, which is so important.
Yeah.
I did, before we end, I wanted to get, because you have such a unique take, I wanted to just hear, I mean, I'm a doctor. I worked in the hospitals with the COVID. COVID's bad. I mean, it's a really bad disease. We don't know how to treat it. We're starting to learn a little bit. And the social distancing has kept down the number now. So we're, I think as New York goes, the country's going. And so New York is, we were flattening the curve, and that's all great and everything, but it's scary, right? And this goes back to the fear, but you have a different take on it. And I just wanted to see if you could talk briefly or not about about your view on COVID and how it's a reset. And I mean, I kind of see it the same way.
Yeah, I mean, and it's not that it's a different view. It's finding the good in this.
Yeah.
Okay. So, it's not a different view in the sense that it's an opposing view. And I think that's the important thing is like we can hold multiple perspectives. And this is what's most important is that people get into their stuff and their perspective. And then what's the hardest right now is they create a lot of hatred for others and a lot of division for others that don't agree or don't hold the same perspective.
Hmm.
And that's the worst thing we can do. That's the worst virus is the anger, the fear and the division that we create amongst ourselves. That to me is obviously heartbreaking, but what Michelle is speaking to that I've seen from a spiritual context is it is absolutely an opportunity for those that are resonating for it, for a spiritual awakening, for a spiritual up leveling on massive levels. Because at its core, what is happening is a lot of stuff is being shaken up. And for what individuals are experiencing is things that they have to say no to on so many levels. Things that they can't do anymore, aren't doing anymore on so many levels are things that maybe weren't serving them, or they can really start to question. And this is like a pause. I mean, it's a pause for the earth, for Mother Earth, like less flights and less driving and all that stuff. And, it's a nice little reset for nature. People are, posting all those pictures about the skies are cleaner and, that's beautiful, right? So this is about looking for the good and finding the good in this, because if you can't see the light at the end of the tunnel, then, it's going to be really hard to help bring other people to that light. And so we all need to be, as I've been saying, like get back on our horse so we can help other people get back on theirs. And so what you do have is people are pausing. And so all these other drama things that have happened throughout my lifetime, even things like 9/11, they happen and people just go back to work. I mean, I remember having a job when 9/11 happened. I was still in high school. I just remember going to work and everyone just went back to work. Like we took like a day or two off or something, and then people just went back to work.
Yeah, I didn't get any time off.
Yeah, exactly.
I was a resident, I was a resident in New York.
Wow.
Yeah. I watched the towers burn from my hospital. Yeah.
That's just nuts. And then we went back to work. And work is very easy and powerful distraction. Right? You just stay busy on your work. And that could be a good thing, that can be a bad thing. You can be going through like a relationship issue and maybe you just need a little distraction, but prolonged distraction of anything is like, what you resist persists. Like if you ignore something long enough, it's going to get pretty bad. And what I'm getting at is like, this is the first time as a larger collective that we've had one of these things happen on the planet where we've also, by and large, the vast majority of people have had to pause themselves and stop and not
since 1918. I mean, the
right.
Spanish
Exactly.
flu. Yeah.
In my lifetime, for sure.
Right. In our lifetimes. I mean, almost everybody who witnessed the Spanish flu is dead. So
yeah.
You would expect that because it's over 100 years ago.
So it's impacting people on so many different levels because people really have to just stop and process. They have to reflect. So much of their life is changing, and it's so beautiful. And this is part of my perspective. And people don't like this, but it's part of your spiritual growth. Is pain is a blessing, and we spend our lives trying to avoid it. But pain is a blessing because it's in these moments of pain where we grow. Pain forces us really to pay attention. Pain, even physical pain, like putting your hand on the stove, and it's lit, obviously, in this example. Like if it felt good, you wouldn't take your hand away and then your flesh would melt off, right? And so it's serving us as like hey, pay attention. And emotional pain, even like fear and worry, that's pain. That's emotional pain. And when it gets bad enough, hopefully we'll pay attention. And so that's what's happening. So many more people are paying attention. It's the things that matter in their life. Maybe they're questioning, maybe I was unhappy at my job. Maybe I was working too much. Maybe I was passing up my kids growing up, and I wasn't even present for them. And now I am. And this is the life I want now. And for everyone, it's been different. For everyone, it's been different. I've talked to so many people, and everything that they're going through is different. But the one common thing is that their growth, their evolution is accelerated at an unprecedented rate during this time. For those that have embraced it, those that are chosen, like, I'm going to use this time for good, or I'm going to find the good, or I'm going to find a way to grow. So people are growing spiritually. They're waking up to their own power. They're waking up to what's important and what matters in their life. And they're even starting to question things.
Yeah.
Like just questioning what is good health. And how can I take care of myself and my family? I mean, my sister started growing an herb garden in her backyard. She's like, you know what? I'm gonna take my family, because she has two little cute kiddos, and I'm gonna take their health to a whole new level. We're gonna boost our immunity. We're gonna eat healthier. We're gonna eat better, and we're not gonna rely on so much on going out and eating high fat and sodium meals that you're gonna get at a restaurant. That's freaking beautiful. So I always look for the good in everything, and that doesn't make me a positive thinker. I think that people want to judge people as like, oh, you're like Pollyanna or positive thinker or whatever
Right.
as
Yeah.
bad. What you're referring to is someone who is ignoring or denying what is. And I don't ever want to do that. It's not burying your head in the sand to what is. Like,
Mhm.
what is what is, and we can't deny it. Like, the country got shut down. This thing is, spread. It's killed the amount of people that it's killed. It's infected the amount of people. That's what is. But it's a choice to choose to also see where good lies in all of this,
Yeah.
where opportunity is. And that's been my experience in life as soon as I developed a spiritual context. There is good in everything that happens. There is always some good in something, in everything. And it's not always easy to find, but you didn't always sign up for easy. So if you take the time.
Yeah, no, I have to completely agree with you on that. And I have a little thing on my computer. This is what is the opportunity in this? That,
Totally.
that is, I'm always looking for an opportunity. And I mean, there was a tragedy that happened. One of my surgeons who worked for me actually tragically died by suicide in November. And that was a shock to everyone. And I had the ability to kind of pivot through that. And it kind of confirmed that I was ready to leave medicine, you
Right.
know,
Right.
but it's just, and even with that, with it being as tragic as it was, I still said, what is the opportunity in this?
And anybody who would get maybe triggered or disagree with anything we have to say
Yeah.
here about finding the good in anything,
Yeah.
go talk to Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning,
I know.
because that's
Yeah.
the ultimate of it. you know, it's like
That's a great book. I love
what
that book.
it is. And everyone
Yeah.
should read that. And if he endured what he did and created the meaning that he created, and yes, what we're going through sucks, but it's nothing in comparison to that. That's nothing. That's years of just some of the worst stuff that I
Torture.
can't even, fathom, and
Yeah.
still found the good in that. Like
That's
that, and
yeah.
that's so beautiful. And I learned long ago, and this is the true freedom that we have, is to realize that, nothing means anything except the meaning that we give it. And that
Yes.
really is our free will and our choice, that no matter what's happening, no matter what has happened, no matter what our circumstances is, we still have complete 100% freedom to choose, what am I going to make this mean? How will this, define me? What does this say about what's possible? Where is the good in this? It's those that keep asking those questions and seeking those answers that not only do they get through this, but they thrive, you
Right.
know?
Nothing has meaning except for that I give it. That's one of Jim's sayings, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think that's a good place to stop.
Always.
A great place to stop. Wow, Jim. Jesus, that's great. Thanks so much, James.
Yeah. Thank you.
Now, if you have questions about the topics covered in this or any other podcast, I invite you to open a conversation with me via email at info@menopausemovement.com or on Facebook Messenger through my Facebook page at Dr. Michelle Gordon. That's DrMichellEllelGordon. I also want to invite you to join in our next beta group. Here at the Menopause Movement, we are always trying out new methods of teaching and the best ways to get on top of your menopause symptoms. We regularly run beta test groups where we create a learning experience valued at $2,000, but at no cost to you in exchange for feedback and testimonials. To get notified of our next beta group, simply sign up at beta.menopausemovement.com. And thanks so much for being a part of the menopause movement. I appreciate you.